Henry's project was well, it was a challenge. That was a unique challenge in its own set. It had been in damp conditions, a damp environment. It was a mixture of film. We had a mixture of magnetic 16, and we also had a mixture of 16mm film. So it was a mission of two halves. It was beyond the mould and penicillin state. The film was actually got to a point where, unfortunately, a lot of the 16mm magnetic, we actually lost, unfortunately. It was just too far gone. It had reacted. It was to the point where it was decomposing and breaking down. However, in respect to the important part was the film, and a lot of that, yes, we were able to actually save and actually get back going. Following the systematic steps and the process, we were able to get that film back to a shiny condition again.
The 1969 air race really was obviously to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the first flight from England to Australia by Sir Ross and Keith Smith in a Vickers Vimy, which was an ex-World War I twin-engine biplane bomber. Same design as used by Alcock and Brown on their famous transatlantic flight in the same year. The England to Australia air race was different. It was longer, of course, or it was more problematic because there was land mass, so light aircraft could actually refuel en route, whereas over the Atlantic, it was down to sort of commercial aircraft or military aircraft or aircraft with a range. So the England to Australia air race opened up the same possibilities that the great air races of the 1930s, notably the 1934 Robertson race to Australia won by a DH-88 Comet. It opened up that sort of thing, so a lot of people could enter. They chose this Beech Bonanza aeroplane, which was no youthful aircraft. It had been built in the 1950s to a pre-war, post-war design, and perhaps it would have been a better choice in light of subsequent events if perhaps they had chosen a slightly different machine.
The airplane certainly had the capability of doing it. Whether it had the crew or the pilots involved to be able to do it and complete it is a different matter. But that's historically then what's it shown. So my name is Stephen Cleary. I was born in Paisley in Scotland in 1957, and I now live in Killearn, Stirlingshire. I own the Beech Bonanza, November 111 Sierra Charlie, as it is just now, and that registration was got specifically because it's my initials on it, SC. Well, the thing about aeroplanes is it's its useful load and its range. So those are the two things. So when we talk about compatibility in aeroplanes and fit for mission, so what is it you want? Where do you want to go in the aeroplane? If you only want to stay local and fly into fields, then you're in a different stream of aeroplanes. The Bonanza is a utility category aeroplane. It's got a great range. It'll do 1,200 miles. It'll do it at 160 knots. It'll carry 4 people. CFG in weight is good. It's got a useful load of some 1,250 pounds, which in technical terms means that we could take off with 3/4 tanks and have 2 pounds of baggage in the back. It's a different kettle of fish flying an airliner to is flying a GE aircraft. But I wouldn't have imagined that they had lack of experience. I mean, the one thing that always catches a lot of us out is weather. And it's having the understanding of when to call it a day and land and or continue on. That comes with experience and that comes with knowledge, and even very, very experienced pilots still get caught out day in, day out flying all manner of aeroplanes, not just Beech Bonanzas. But the weather is a significant factor, and particularly when we're going any distance. So in 1969, one would imagine that the forecasting was not as good as it is today, with no satellite forecasting. Therefore, they were reliant on, I assume, a phone call to the arrival airport, which might be many hundreds of miles away. And the weather at one point could be great when you take off, not so great when you're midway through your journey, etc., etc. So I think probably the biggest challenge for them would have been weather, and obviously the entry and exit into airspace, flying over countries that they maybe shouldn't have been flying over, they didn't have permissions to fly over. So a challenging trip at any stage. I'm sure they were fully experienced for that.
British night aviation scene was marked by an awful lot of what we might call characters. And many of these characters attempted to fly to Australia, or at least entered the race with a whole range of diverse and utterly unsuitable aeroplanes. But most of the people were enthusiastic amateurs, I think. And I would imagine that Mike Dunk's effort was very much in the enthusiastic amateur bracket. Although, of course, they had Carl Schofield, who was a commercial pilot, and I think for BEA at the time. So he was the main flyer. Jan Berman, the owner of the Beech Bonanza aircraft, went along. I don't know whether he was an experienced pilot. I don't know anything about him. I don't think I ever met him. But he certainly must have had money to be able to afford to fly an aeroplane like that, or own an aeroplane. And John Kay, the photographer, who had no flying experience at all, as far as I'm aware. And then, of course, there was Mike Dunk, who I think was going really more in the role of the producer-director, but also took a hand with flying because he was an experienced pilot.
I'm fairly certain that it was his idea, and I think he just happened to be the gel that pulled it all together between all of them. They obviously all had experience of flying in one shape or another. My dad was really, I suppose, the amateur among them, but I think he was the main man. I think he was the one that came up with the idea and pulled it together. The only thing that I can honestly say I recollect is the fact that I knew there was film somewhere in the house relating to the air race, but that's about as far as it goes, really.
I think it was put in the attic because he'd always been meaning to do something with it. I think there were various problems along the way about the film and the ownership of the film. But I always think he meant to do something about it, if it was only to restore it or to use it for his own personal use. But I don't know why it was. I think it was just ease of storage to put it in the attic. But yeah, it was definitely something he always wanted to do, but never really got around to it. He would be absolutely thrilled with the fact that one, the film's been restored because it was something he was meaning to do for years. And secondly, I think he would have liked to have been very much hands-on, and he probably would have been sort of trying to organise things himself and to film it himself, and you know, be generally involved. But I think he would have been absolutely thrilled with the fact that the film's restored and that you're doing something about it.
Oh, he would undoubtedly be delighted to think that that someone was following in his footsteps and actually using something. Oh, there would be no question. He had no meanness about him in that sense. He just wanted to run things. But as far as sort of like, if someone said, do you know what they're doing, wherever he is, they're doing this, your old film. Oh no, he'd be absolutely delighted with it. He wouldn't want to become involved in it. He'd want to run the whole thing. And you lot would be reduced to making tea, fetching and carrying, and the occasional sort of pressing a button or plugging something in. Because he was the supreme control freak. But he couldn't sit back and let you do it. He'd be interrupting, and the interruption would get longer, and then he would show you how to do it, and before you knew it, he'd be doing it. So, whether he's looking down from on high and grinding his teeth saying, what are they doing? I don't know. But as far as having him here, it would be a good thing. Personally,